Hello, my name is Julie Ryan, and I am the Engineering Manager for the South Tahoe Public Utility District. Thank you for taking an interest in the district's capital improvement program. This slideshow was originally presented to the district's Board of Directors at a public workshop on February 17. The district's board and staff recognizes that attending a workshop in person or online may not rise to the top of our customers' priority list. So, in the spirit of transparency and open communication, we have recorded the presentation for you to review at your convenience. It's important for the district's customers to understand its capital improvement program for two reasons. First, because we are a public utility, the district customers are also its owners. We want to make sure that our owners are aware of any problems in our water and sewer systems and are confident that they are being addressed. The CIP is how the district addresses those needs. Second, the CIP program is the primary driver for the district's funding needs. It's the reason behind the increases in water and sewer rates that the district is considering this year. In years past, the district's finance and engineering departments have teamed up to conduct a single workshop that focused on both the CIP and the annual budget. As a result, the infrastructure needs of our water and sewer systems would sort of get lost in the budget discussion. So this year, we've carved out an afternoon to focus more closely on the state of the systems and the needs for the future. The hope is that this approach will spur conversation and provide our board of directors with the information it needs to make sound financial decisions for the district. Our list of goals for the workshop today is really pretty short. We'll take a quick look back over the past year and summarize what we've accomplished. Then we'll spend the bulk of the time looking at the needs of our water and sewer systems going forward, going into some detail on how those projects are identified, and then focusing on one system in particular, the water distribution system. And finally, we will ask our board to help us define funding scenarios they would like considered for presentation at the annual budget workshop in late March. The annual budget schedule presented here is tentative and the dates are flexible. Some of the calendared events are required, but some are optional. For example, since our customers have already approved the level of rate increases we are presenting here today through our last Prop 218 process, our board has some options open to them about the level of customer outreach that we undertake, such as customer notices or public meetings. Let's start by looking back at our sewer projects. 2021 was a good year for sewer projects. We got a lot done and very little got pushed into 2022. The asterisk on this slide just means the work isn't quite done yet, but we do expect to finish these projects early in the 2022 grading season. It's not the same picture for our water system. 2021 was a year of pushed projects. This was due somewhat to funding delays. Some of it was due to contractor capacity and long lead times, but mostly the delays were caused by the weather. Between the Caldor fire and some early snowfall, we were not as lucky in 2021 as we have been in past years for late season work. For the projects that we are pushing to 2022, it's our intent to complete this work in addition to the work that we had already planned for 2022, so that the 2021 delays don't have a trickle-down effect on the rest of the CIP progress. Next, let's move into a quick refresher on what assets we have in our system. It's important to understand the replacement value of our system as a touchstone for the types and scale of projects that we're proposing. The district's sewer system is a master plan system. That means it was designed and installed by the South Tahoe Public Utility District back in the 60s and 70s. It accounts for roughly 3/4 of the total value of district infrastructure. Only about 1/4 is attributed to our water system. About 2/3 of the sewer system value is in its buried assets. That's the network of sewer mains that move wastewater to and from our wastewater treatment plant. The rest of the sewer facilities are above ground pump stations, treatment facilities, and storage facilities, both in the basin and out in Alpine County. The origin story of the district's water system could not be more different than its sewer system. South Tahoe Public Utility District did not build its water system. Instead, the water system that we manage today is made up of a patchwork of small neighborhood water systems acquired and cobbled together by the district in the 1970s and 80s. These mom and pop systems were typically installed by developers and were built to a lesser standard than we would design a water system today. Almost 90% of the value of the water system is in its underground piping network. A really simple way to illustrate the situation we are facing with the district's facilities is to look at system age. It's shown here on this graph in the x-axis versus the total value of assets that are that age on the vertical or y-axis. This graph depicts each of our types of facilities or assets as different colors. I want to focus on the underground piping facilities. Here we show water mains in blue, we show gravity sewer mains in red, and we show sewer force mains in green. The red line on the plot is at 50 years. 50 years is the design standard to which these older assets were likely designed, given the quality of materials available at the time that they were installed. I want to point out that most of our facilities are to the right of this red 50-year line. They are all at or beyond the expected end of their life. Not only that, almost all of the assets to the right of the red line are buried. That means it's harder to monitor their decline. That said, for our gravity sewer system, the part in red, the district built those systems itself. And so we have confidence in the quality of their original construction. But because these pipes are not pressurized and there are manholes that allow us to access the pipes, we also have confidence in our ability to track the declining condition of those pipes. We can get inside our gravity pipes periodically and take a look easily with our TV equipment. Our water system in blue, however, is a different story. Because the district's water system is made up of small developer or mom and pop water systems, they were originally built to a lesser standard than we would design a water system today. These pressurized water mains cannot be easily accessed or seen, and it's much harder to actively monitor their declining condition. One more thing I want to point out about the age of our water system. We use the district's GIS mapping system to develop this plot. Almost all the water pipes in that system have been assigned an age of 70 years or younger. However, district staff recently uncovered a master plan document from 1960 that suggests portions of our water system that are still in service today were likely installed as early as the 1930s. So this graph actually underestimates the age of our water facilities. There should be blue columns in the slots for 70 to 80 and 80 to 90 years old. So how do we assess our system annually to come up with the capital improvement program to rehabilitate our aging assets? First, I want to make clear that we don't develop a wish list or a catch-all. We are very methodical about how we decide which potential projects make it onto our plan for the next 10 years. These are the projects that are needed to maintain a system in good health. This is also not the unconstrained projects list, which is a term that we often use. I'll talk about the unconstrained list in more detail later, but basically the unconstrained list is a long list of additional projects that we have identified but that did not make the cut for the upcoming 10 years. The projects on that list could become critical at any time and get moved up onto the 10-year plan. The district has selected 10 years as its planning horizon because that is a manageable time frame. It allows enough time to plan, design, and fund projects without looking so far into the future as to become cumbersome. 10 years is also a reasonable time frame in which we should expect to be able to meet many of the goals that we've set for ourselves. If it's going to take more than 10 years to achieve a goal, is it really a priority for us? Every project on the 10-year plan, the needs-based list, meets some current goal of the district. To define the projects that are considered for the plan, first the engineering managers meet with each of the crews individually to review the list from last year and to add new projects to the list. We listen to their concerns for their facilities and we weigh their priorities. There's also a few projects that engineering has added to the plan to anticipate future system needs. Here I'm talking mainly about gravity sewer and water pipelines. We look back at the inspection and leak history over the last year, update our projections, and then we'll move new projects onto the 10-year plan if it's warranted. We figure out what facilities are not getting the attention that they need, and we add new asset management programs to the plan to provide us with that information so that we can make smart decisions for those facilities in the future. Once we have the project list, we look at the timing, we spread the projects over 10 years, we distribute the costs and the workloads evenly and submit that to finance for budgeting. We have some back and forth with finance and we discuss the needs with our board. That's what we're doing today. The last thing we will do is to take the new plan and update or compile new project information sheets. These sheets were distributed to the board for the first time last year, and we'll update those this year and redistribute them both to the board and to staff, and then we'll post them on the website later this spring once we know what next year's budget is likely to be. Some questions I've heard from the board are, what makes a project? How does staff decide what goes into the plan? And what turns a concern or a project concept into a need that should be addressed in the next 10 years? Well, the project must achieve a goal that the district has set for itself. The main goal of the CIP is to address critical failures within the systems. But beyond that, we also need to address other deficiencies. To guide us, we turn to the levels of service criteria that the district has developed for itself, and we consider other external drivers, such as interagency coordination or pending regulation to help us set our priorities. Just a bit more about the levels of service. What are they? These are a list of goals that the staff has developed with board input for the water and sewer systems. We did those for the water system back in 2013 with our last water system optimization plan. And then even earlier than that, we developed the levels of service for our sewer system back in 2009 with the collection system master plan. Those sewer system goals got updated for our Big Five condition assessment for our 5 largest sewer pump stations over the last couple of years. Basically, if a project concept aligns with any of these goals, it moves forward. If it doesn't align with these goals, the project doesn't move forward. It may, however, remain on the unconstrained list and wait for either the goals to change or the condition to change so that it drives up the project's priorities. Let's talk specifically about what goes into our CIP or our needs-based plan. This slide describes the specific goals for the projects that are included on this year's sewer needs-based plan. All of the projects on this year's plan meet one or more of the goals on this slide. This is the same list of goals that we used to build the plan last year. It didn't change from year to year. These are the specific goals that we use this year to include the projects on the water needs-based plan. The goal shown in red is new this year. Last year, we only used staff input confirmed by leak history to define the worst condition water lines in our system and define projects for those. This year, we input our complete list of waterline projects into our new artificial intelligence tool called Baseform. And Baseform ranked them for us by priority. We made sure that the 20 waterline projects with the worst condition scores made it onto this year's water needs-based plan. This added around 20,000 linear feet of waterline replacement to the plan, and it accounts for most of the increase between this year's plan and last year's plan. So that's the process we followed to develop our CIP plan in a nutshell. At this point in the presentation last year, I gave the board a brief overview of several of the most stressed parts of our system, talking about water tanks, sewer pump stations, the wastewater treatment plant, and so on. Today, we're going to focus solely on water lines because that is the system that has been the hardest hit by past funding decisions. And it is the system that we are the most concerned about its continuing health moving forward. At the risk of repeating myself, it's important to remember that the district did not construct most of its water system itself. It consists mostly of mom and pop neighborhood water systems acquired by South Tahoe PUD in the 1970s and 80s and cobbled together into a very complex network of zones and a wide mix of construction methods and materials. The photo on this slide is from an actual section of water main removed from our system around 5 years ago. It was leaking, and when our water crew went to put on a repair ban, the pipe collapsed because it was so corroded. I wish this was a unique story, but it's not. We hear these stories from our water crew several times a year. Here's our current situation. This year's proposed capital improvement plan for the water system calls for over $73 million in water line replacement in the next 10 years. Water lines account for more than 65% of the total needs for the water system. By contrast, this past year's budget approved a 10-year plan that would only replace $33 million in water lines over 10 years, even though more than 50% of the current budget is for water lines. So, bottom line, we have a severe shortfall between our water budget and our water system needs. 80% of the shortfall hits the waterline replacement program. I don't want to sound melodramatic, but this is a big problem because the water lines are in worse shape than any other asset group that the district manages, and the failures are the most likely to sneak up on us. The longer we wait to replace failed lines, the greater the occurrence of water quality issues, as we've started to see in 2021, the more costly the projects will become, and the greater the risk of the water system causing damage to private property and roadways in the meantime. The photo on the left of this slide is of actual road damage out in the county caused by a single water leak this last summer. Before we start to talk about the condition of the system, let's take a minute to look at the goals the district has set for its water lines. This slide presents the levels of service set back in 2013. The goals that are listed in black, we feel, are largely on track. The goals that are listed in red, we feel we are clearly failing to meet. And the two goals that are listed here in bold will be the focus of this presentation. The district has set a goal for itself to have 100% of its water system provide customers with access to emergency water. The district has also set a goal for itself to maintain an annual replacement rate of 1.7% of the total system value or more per year. Over the past several years, the district has gotten pretty good at comparing its current performance to its own past performance. But what we haven't done a lot of yet is compare our performance to others. There are tools for that. So for the presentation today, I decided it would be useful to use the 2020 AWWA, that's the American Waterworks Association, benchmarks survey to see how we are doing by comparison to other agencies in our region. The AWWA defines our region as the Western United States, Western Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. So, starting with the replacement rate. According to the AWWA benchmark, 25% of the agencies in our region replace their assets at a rate at or above 1.5% of the system value per year, and 25% replace their assets at a rate at or below 0.4% per year. So how has South Tahoe PUD done? This graph shows the ages of the pipes in our system going back to the beginning of our replacement program nearly 30 years ago. The vast majority of those mains were installed by contractors and some by our crews to replace failed lines that we had acquired in the 1970s and 80s. The red bar is that 1.7% level of service goal that the district has set for itself. To replace 1.7%, we would be replacing 22,500 linear feet per year, and we could replace every pipe in our system over a 60-year period. In the early years of the program, we were doing pretty well. We were meeting or exceeding the target around half the time, and we were averaging about 1.2% replacement rate per year. But then in 2009, our replacement rates started to drop, and they've never really recovered. In one year, in 2014, we had a pretty big year. We installed 3 waterline projects across the city area, but then our progress plummeted. The focus shifted to the meters, and the waterline replacement program has essentially collapsed. We've just started to recover, but at a small fraction of our former annual replacement rate. 2 things about this history actually give me hope. First, it tells me that we can manage it. With a mix of staff, consultants, and contractors, we kept the pace that we need to now for 17 years. Second, if we bid it, they will come. We've been concerned about contractor capacity to take on the volume of work that we need to complete. But clearly, in the past, we have found ways to get that much work done. In 11 of the last 29 years, we constructed more pipe than we're currently proposing that we install over the next 10 years. Now, let's take a look at the other level of service goal that we're going to focus on today. How are we doing providing access to emergency water? For fire hydrants, fire pumps, and backup power, all the known deficiencies will be addressed in the next 10 years with the current budget. And the district has been very successful at getting outside funding for these efforts. So while the current 10-year plan sets aside capital funds for them, it is very likely that the costs associated with these goals will be at least partially offset by grants. But the biggest piece of this level of service goal is addressing undersized water lines in our system, and that element is underfunded in our current budget. As of 2013, when the levels of service goals were defined, we had 242,000 linear feet of 4-inch and under water line remaining in our system. But over the last 10 years, we haven't made much progress chipping away at this number. If we continue at this rate, it'll take another 44 years to replace it all. However, if we had kept pace with our pre-2010 waterline replacement rate, by now we would have replaced an additional 130,000 linear feet of undersized main, and we would have addressed all of our remaining fire flow needs as well as the top 9 condition-based replacements. If we resume our former pace, then we can address all of our fire deficiencies in the next 10 years. So that covers how we're assessing deficiencies and level of service goals for our water lines. But the biggest problem is this: is our water system failing? Back in 2017, the engineering department was challenged to improve its use of data in identifying capital projects. We've worked hard on that, and we hope you'll agree that we've made a lot of progress. We're going to focus on that data to help us confirm that our system is failing. For the water system, our focus has been primarily on 2 criteria. The first criteria we will look at is our water losses. High water loss is an indicator of poor system health. Basically, we have holes in our pipes. We are not as interested in how water loss affects the district's cost of water. We are more interested in what water losses tell us about our pipe's state of failure. You've heard a lot from Steve Caswell, our principal engineer, about water losses in the past several years, as he helps the district navigate the upcoming water loss regulations. So, on top of being an indicator of system health, water loss will soon be a metric used by the state to regulate us. If we cannot meet the standards that they set for us, then we will risk penalties and loss of grant funding, and we could even be compelled to increase our pipe replacement program. Because we are now fully metered, our ability to accurately measure our losses has improved greatly over the past few years. The second criteria we will look at is our history of water leaks. The primary function of our water crew is to repair leaks on a system. And over the past few years, we've put a lot of work into improving our record keeping so that we have a robust leak history. The leak history is now the most comprehensive body of data that we have for establishing the health of our system. Let's take a look outside STPUD again. AWWA has set a benchmark for real water losses in gallons per connection per day. In our region, the best performing 25% of water purveyors have water losses of 20 gallons per customer per day or less. The worst performing 25% have water losses of 47 gallons per connection per day or more. So how does STPUD do? South Tahoe Public Utility District in 2020 had a real water loss calculation audited by the state of 63 gallons per connection per day. That puts us in the worst 7% of water purveyors in our region. Now let's talk about water leaks. The AWWA benchmark study suggests the best performing 25% of water purveyors in our region have less than 3.8 leaks per 100 miles of water main per year. The worst 25% have more than 29.1 leaks per 100 miles of water main per year. So how does the district compare for leaks? In 2021, the district repaired 56 leaks per 100 miles of water main. That puts our water system in the worst performing 10% of water systems in our region. Neither of these comparisons for water loss or for water leaks paint a very pretty picture of the current health of the district system. The next question to ask about leaks is, how has our own leak rate changed over time? In 2021, we repaired a total of 229 leaks. That's up 23% from the average annual total of 186 leaks in 2018 through 2020. This leak count is concerning for what it means for staffing and system health, but how does that translate into dollars and cents? Well, that picture for 2021 is even worse. In 2021, we spent a total of $1.2 million repairing leaks. That's up nearly $500,000 or 68% from the average annual expenditure from 2018 to 2020. It's worth noting two things about this increase in costs. First, in 2021, we had two major breaks on Normuck and View out in the county that destroyed sections of roadway. The costs to rebuild those roads are excluded from these totals. The work hasn't been completed yet. Second, all these costs are presented in today's dollars, so year-to-year inflation has already been accounted for. Our assessment of the situation is that the leaks are becoming bigger and tougher to repair. We expect the upward trend in cost to continue. In developing our water line replacement plan, the biggest challenge for the district is this: to replace enough pipe each year that the leak rate halts, or better yet, that it retreats. Why is it important to head off these failures? There's lots of reasons, but some of which I've already mentioned. But the two most direct implications are Leaks tax our water crew and keep them from focusing on other priority activities like fire hydrant maintenance, valve exercising, and flushing. And two, our leak count is an indicator of our water loss. If the state is going to regulate our water loss, then we need to maintain our current levels. If we allow our water loss to increase, we expect it will have negative financial implications for the district. But how do we predict and get ahead of a buried system that we can't see? Right now, BaseForm is the primary tool that we're using to look ahead. We've talked about it before. This tool is updated periodically every few weeks or months with our GIS data and our leak data, and it plugs the data into an algorithm developed with input from other water systems to predict our future failure rate. We are still developing the tool, but we are now at a point where we can use it to help us make some decisions about the future. So what is it telling us? First, if we were to replace 22,000 linear feet of the projects that we've already planned every year for the next 10 years, we would expect our leak rate to hold steady. Anything less, and we can expect our leak rate to increase. Even if we move forward with our needs-based plan, 15,000 linear feet per year, we expect our leaks to increase by at least 25% over the next 10 years. If we continue funding a smaller program like we have been, we can expect our leak rate to increase at least 67%. These projections all assume that we will be focused on the project areas that have already been defined. But beyond those areas, the rest of the system will continue to degrade while our attention is on the defined projects. We have really run out of time. We expect that the rest of our system-wide, will see a big increase in leak rate in the next 7 to 10 years. We really need to get our current project list completed so that we can start to plan for those next areas. Clearly, I am making a plea today that the board fund the needs for our waterline replacement program. But at the same time, we can't let our sewer program fall behind. Over the past 2 years, in response to the unprecedented circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Directors chose to hold water and sewer rates steady, not implementing pre-authorized rate increases and implementing rate relief programs to support our customers in need. These actions had a big impact on the progress of the district's capital improvement program. Now we need to resume investment in our capital improvement program. How much do we expect it to cost to address the current needs of the system in the next 10 years? We need $101 million for the sewer and $113 million for the water. There is a little ray of sunshine for the sewer plan. A $101 million program is actually down $5 million from last year. But after developing the project list for the water side, the water needs are up $15 million from last year. I am concerned that the needs of the water system are spiraling out of control. Last year, we had roughly a $40 million delta between the needs and what was budgeted for water. This year, it's grown to nearly $50 million. Which needs don't get met in the next 10 years if we stick with a similar budget as was funded last year? If you dive into the How much do we expect it to cost to address the current needs of the system in the next 10 years? We need $101 million for sewer and $113 million for water. There is a little ray of sunshine for the sewer plan. The $101 million program is actually down $5 million over last year. But after developing the project list for the water side, the water needs are up $15 million from last year. I'm concerned that the needs of the water system are spiraling out of control. Last year, we had roughly a $40 million delta between the needs and what we budgeted. If the budget this year remains similar to what it was last year, that delta grows to nearly $50 million. Which needs don't get met in the next 10 years if we stick with a similar budget as last year? If you dive into the detailed project schedule for our capital improvement program, what we call the 10-year plan, you will see that we will have to eliminate some projects and delay others. On the water side, we would eliminate all collaboration opportunity projects. That's our Apache Waterline, our Pioneer Trail Large Ski Run, and Park Avenue Number 1, which was pushed out to 2032. These projects were all established for collaboration with the City of South Lake Tahoe and El Dorado County. We would eliminate all but 3 condition-based waterline replacements. 6 would be gone and 3 would be delayed. We would eliminate 9 fire flow projects from the plan that were eliminated last year. So we would make no progress over last year on fire flow projects. We would eliminate all of the same pump station projects that were eliminated last year. David Lane, our water efficiency program, our district metered areas, and 4 tank coatings, plus 1 new tank coating that should have moved on to the plan this year. We would eliminate the Look Tank Out road improvements, which would help protect our tank road to Lookout, which was obliterated during the Caldor fire. There's a loop line on O'Reilly on Highway 50 that would be dropped. On the sewer side, a reduced budget would mean that we would eliminate $10 million worth of undefined gravity sewer projects, as well as 2 defined projects worth $6 million. We would eliminate 5 sewer pump station rehabilitations from the list. 4 were the same as last year, and then 1 new one that had been intended to move on to the plan this year. And we would eliminate the air header replacement at the wastewater treatment plant. It's a $5 million project, and it was also eliminated last year. As a reminder, the 10-year plan includes only the highest priority projects that are well enough defined that we can develop preliminary estimates of cost. There are many more projects in various states of development that will compete for a place on the plan in the next few years. There's the unconstrained list, projects that are already defined but are not high enough in priority to make it onto the plan. On that list are 37 water line projects, 17 sewer projects. These are mostly pump station rehabilitations, underground piping replacements at the wastewater treatment plant. We're continuing to assess the condition and deficiencies of our system, and we expect those efforts to define more projects soon. In addition, there are 2 notable types of facilities that are crucial to our operation and are mostly of the same age. We want to spread out their rehab over time, but before we can define projects for them, we need to assess the needs of each facility and make a priority list. And finally, some of the projects on the plan have been budgeted as replacements. Based on our past experience, however, it is pretty likely that some of these projects will grow through the design phase to become full facility replacements at additional cost. And one more thought about what's not in the plan. We're currently in a very uncertain time for engineering projects. Materials are scarce, lead times are long, and contractors are busy. For our Bowers Waterline project that opened bids in February, we received only 1 bid, but we don't have the luxury of waiting. The systems need our attention, and many of our funding sources have hard deadlines, so staff intends to move forward with projects even at a higher price. Our plan is built assuming construction costs rise 3% per year. Historically, this has been a reasonable planning metric, but right now, prices are escalated rapidly, and we're already seeing our bids coming in high. That Bowers bid was spot on our engineer's estimate, but the engineer's estimate was 10% higher than our planning level budget. If our funding for the CIP does not keep pace with construction cost, then we are able to build less and less each year. We expect our bid prices will come in at least 14% higher this year than last year. That's the highest year-to-year increase in construction cost that the industry has seen in the last 30 years. That increase is not reflected in our plan. And I'll say one more time, we need to increase rates at least as much as inflation to keep our workload constant. With 0% rate increases in the last 2 years, we've lost a lot of ground that we won't get back without substantial increases in funding. This slide was taken from the fiscal year 22 annual budget, and it illustrates the district's revenue and expenditures. Where our funding comes from for sewer and water is shown on the left. Where the money goes is shown on the right. On the funding side, the biggest piece of the pie is our district service charges, what our customers pay in rates. This piece of the pie is the primary lever that the board can pull to increase funding from year to year. The remainder, which is a much smaller percentage overall, accounts for 22% of our water fund and 42% of our sewer fund, is largely out of our control to adjust. And that's why our discussion generally focuses so heavily each year on rate increases. On the expense side, you can see that the capital programs account for 29 to 34% of our budget. I've learned from working with our chief financial officer that when he builds the budget, he starts by allocating anticipated funding to operations and maintenance, debt service, and labor. What is left over is what's available for capital expenditures. That's why you'll hear us say that the board's decisions on rate increases directly impact engineering's capital improvement program. With that understanding that the rate increases the board approves this year have a direct impact on the funding level for the capital improvement program, let's take a look at what rate increases our customers would be looking at. This slide shows an average customer. Most of the district customers are residential. They're single-family homes. They have a 3/4-inch service and they use 26 units of water per quarter. That's just shy of 20,000 gallons. What engineering is asking of our board is to seriously consider funding the capital program this year in a way that will set us up to implement our needs-based plan over the next 10 years. For an average customer, they will see less than an $8 per month increase in their water bill. Back in 2018, the district went to its customers and got permission to raise rates up to a preset level each year for the following 5 years. This was part of the mandated rate setting process defined under California's Proposition 218. I want to point out that the proposed rate increase for the coming year is actually $5 per month less than what these customers would be paying if we had kept pace with the rate increases that have already been approved. Besides our residential customers, the district is acutely aware of how rate increases to support the capital improvement program will hit the bottom line of our local businesses and multifamily residential developments. These typical customers have a 2-inch water service and they use 125 units or 93,500 gallons every 3 months. These customers will see on average a $40.77 per month increase in their water bill. To give you an idea of how the rate increases would impact different types of customers, we picked 3 different actual businesses from our customer list and calculated the average monthly increase based on their actual water usage for 2021. Our request for sewer is less. An average residential customer on the sewer side has 3 units and their bill would go up around $4.56 a month. That's around $2.50 per month less than what was the max allowable under the current Prop 218 limit. And here is the impact on typical business and multi-family customer on our sewer side. They will see a $23.47 per month increase in their sewer bill. For those same three businesses we looked at on the water side, their monthly bill increases will vary pretty widely based on the number of sewer units that they have. While the decision our board makes this year is only for this year, we will be back next year and every year after to talk about funding for those years. So you need to see where we're headed. To fully fund the needs-based plan, the capital improvement program, the district would need to continue to increase these rates steadily year after year in order to avoid big jumps in rates like the ones that we've been seeing from Liberty and Southwest Gas lately. Remembering the pie chart, rates are the biggest piece of the funding pie and the only piece that the board really has the ability to adjust. So, next steps. As I mentioned at the beginning, this schedule is tentative. If the board wants staff to develop alternative funding scenarios for their consideration, engineering and finance will work together to do that in the next 2 weeks. We will present those to the Finance Committee on March 1st and to the board by March 30th. Based on the guidance we received from the board at the workshop, we will develop notices to customers of rate increases. These can be mailers, advertisements, or both. Finance will finalize the draft budget by April 22nd, and if it includes rate increases, then we will discuss the need for a public meeting on or around May 5th. We will bring the final budget to the board for a vote on May 19th for implementation as of July 1st. During the February 17th workshop, the board was presented with this slide, and staff asked if they would like us to analyze any other funding scenarios for this year's budget workshop. While there was some interest by the board to see a plan that replaces at least 22,000 linear feet of water line per year so that our leak rate will hold steady, no other specific scenarios were actually requested. And so the annual budget will be prepared as it was presented in this slideshow. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the district's challenges and the CIP plan we have developed to face them. If you have any questions about the program or individual project efforts, please feel free to reach out to our staff. We work for you and we would love to hear from you. Have a great day.